whole LA basin is feeling it. But I also have a lot of high wildfire areas in my district. And so whenever there's this kind of conditions, dry and windy, when there's fires, people, always wondering if one's going to break out near them.
Right. Well, thank you. Laura, we've gotten a number of questions from our participant or attendees today, and just kind of wanted to hear from you. But in 2009, you carried the piece of legislation for the Office of Outdoor Recreation. You talked to being both an equestrian and a mountain biker. You've seen how different types of users can be at odds about access. What do you think is the most effective in making recreation lands available to all types of users?
Well, I think it's definitely preferable when you can to have separate facilities for different types of users. Being on a horse is one thing. If I was a pedestrian, I don't think if I was on a narrow, windy, steep trail, you could easily get hit by a mountain bike as well. So just being aware of what kinds of users you have in different areas is important. But I also, as someone who rides a lot, and we used to ride a lot in the Angeles National Forest, I never minded having mountain bikes around me. But what's helpful is to know when you're going to potentially be exposed to them so that you yourself can be a little bit more aware. And the other thing that I think would be helpful is to educate all users as to what the proper etiquette is, particularly around horses. I think the horse people don't always know to expect mountain bikes in certain areas. And then the mountain bikers have different levels of experience and knowledge about what to do if they encounter horses. And it would be helpful for them to understand a little bit about the kind of horse behavior and what to do if you come across someone, what sort of the do's and don'ts. For instance, personally, it's nice for someone to stop if they're riding towards you, but I, don't expect them to just, to be a statue. And speaking is actually a nice thing to tell the horse what you are, because they may not recognize the person on the bike as being a human. And when they speak, it can actually be soothing for the horse. So, just little things like that. I'm trying to educate people, you may run into horses. Please be careful going around corners. Be careful if you have a blind turn. You don't want to just run into someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just with the understanding we're all in the outdoors and, we enjoy being out there. And so everyone recreates differently. So just having that understanding.
Yep.
Absolutely. We have another question that came in. When it comes to issues around outdoor recreation or access to the outdoors, what are the kinds of issues you're hearing from your constituents? And if you have any specific examples that you'd like to share with our audience, please do.
Sure, and I do hope I don't lose you. I know it looks like I'm in the Hollywood Hills, but I'm actually in a car. It's all an illusion. Right now, everybody is very focused, I think, on the COVID pandemic. And that's brought a lot of people to the outdoors who weren't there before. And when some of the trails were closed because in our district, so I represent Griffith Park and some of the areas around there, like Runyon. I don't represent Runyon Canyon, but it's close by. And there's been a lot of controversy in those areas about closing those amenities. On the one hand, you want people to be able to get out of their houses and be in the outdoors during the pandemic because a lot of the city parks were closed and the playgrounds are closed. But if you get too many people at once, then you can't maintain safe distancing. And that's what was happening up in those hillside areas. So we've had a lot of friction and some controversy about which trails should be closed and when, and how do you try to rework the trails to make them safe. For instance, they made some of the trails one way so people couldn't go in both directions so they could maintain better distancing. So there's been a lot of interest more interest, I'd say, in some of these outdoor areas than we've ever had before. There's also equity issues that have been increased because of COVID. So in some of our urban inner areas where the smaller pocket parks are closed because of safe distancing and too many people wanting to use them, there's issues of how do you then get people, out to where they can enjoy the outdoors, and how do you deal with parking issues and lack of public transportation into those areas, that sort of thing. So there's been a lot more conversation around those outdoor amenities than we've had, I think, ever before.
Right. And I guess I'll just kind of pivot. And what is the conversations with your colleagues around this? Because this isn't just specific to your district. We're seeing this statewide. So what are some of the conversations that you might be having with your colleagues, and especially as your role as chair of the committee?
Well, a lot of the focus has been on these more local issues, like cities, let's say City of Los Angeles deciding yes to close Griffith Park trails, no to closing the meadows in Griffith Park, yes to closing Runyon Canyon on the weekends, but maybe leaving it open during the week when there's less people. And how do you do that and let people know about it in a way where they can get that information up front, so they don't go and drive, park their car, walk with their kids, and then find that the trail is closed. So these are some of the issues that become you can't deal with that on the state level. That's going to have to be decisions that are made locally and in conjunction with local public health departments. So on the statewide level, there's been a lot more conversation, I think, just around wildfire, around pandemic and recovery, and ways of using those co-equal goals of recovery and of opening up access to the outdoors and of making our open spaces safer for people with wildfire risks and everything else that have made us introduce a bond recently that would have been a wildfire bond, but also had a lot of resources going towards open space restoration and access. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get the bond through because there's of course, worries about saddling the general fund right now with bond obligations, a lot of financial issues. So we're still trying to figure out where are we going to get resources put forward. But there's a lot of us who are interested in those outdoor areas, and understanding that as we work on wildfire issues, we also can work on access issues. We can also work on equity issues and transportation issues. So there's a lot of intersecting goals when we talk about outdoor recreation and open spaces.
Well, and talking about goals, I mean, one of the things, and we've all worked together with you over the last few years now, the outdoor recreation community, but what would you like to see from this audience? These are outdoor recreation businesses, nonprofits. These are individuals that want to collaborate and partner with you and your colleagues more. So just want to hear from you, like, what are some of the opportunities that you see, and how can we get more involved?
Well, first, it's been great partnering with you, and you were wonderful advocates on 1111, our outdoor recreation bill. And you've been, you have a great group of businesses that, the thing that's nice about a lot of the outdoor recreation businesses is that they're just really good actors in terms of being good stewards of the land and being environmentally conscious and active, and having a lot of really great goals. And the equity issue is something that I've heard from so many of your members, so they're very aware of that. And you also deal with communities all across the state. So what's nice is that when I worked on 1111, for instance, how much support we got from colleagues on the other side of the aisle who have, so trying to bring everyone together, working on a lot of the same goals. So I'd say to continue to draw those lines between things like wildfire and equity and recreation and sustainability, and making those connections clear to everybody, to the members, to the public, so we see that this isn't, that there's a lot of benefits towards our outdoor recreation economy. And I will say also, the education that I got and a lot of members got about the amount of money and tourism that this industry supports also resonates with sort of our fiscal conservatives and people, maybe that wouldn't be our natural allies with some of these issues. So there's it's a big tent feeling to a lot of these goals that's nice and rare, I think, in Sacramento politics.
Well, and I think that you said it, I mean, outdoor recreation, public lands is bipartisan. People care about these open landscapes, and really, we just want to look at opportunities to partner with you and your colleagues more on how we can advance this. And again, to your point, connecting the dots between what's happening right now, the pandemic, wildfire season, and and equitable access for Californians and visitors. So I know that you're traveling right now. We're going to have your colleague, Assemblymember Garcia, join us next. But is there anything else that we can do for you before you sign off?
Well, you all have been wonderful. I'm going to hopefully enjoy a little bit of outdoor recreation today and up in Lake Tahoe. And although I'm going to spend all of tomorrow in a conference room, socially distanced, talking about transportation infrastructure. So not as much fun, but just keep doing what you're doing. It's been a real honor to partner with you. I want to continue to partner with you. You know, as Natural Resources Chair, I think that we can do a lot together. And I love also the fact that my district in Los Angeles and city of Los Angeles and the surrounding areas care so much about the mountains and the recreation opportunities that they have. So it's great working with you, and I look forward to continuing to do that next year and into the future.
Our pleasure, and we look forward to working with you. Safe travels and have fun outdoors in Lake Tahoe.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Hey everyone, we're just gonna have a brief pause here. We're waiting for Assemblymember Garcia. He's running in a little bit late, but we definitely want to give him the space to talk to the participants and the attendees today. So if you'll just be patient with us, we'll go off video, but we'll leave this slide on for right now. Thank you. Assemblymember Garcia.
Yes, hi there.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good.
It's good to see you. Thanks for making the time to talk this afternoon. I just wanted to give everyone a quick introduction. I feel like a lot of our attendees know you, but if you don't mind, I'll give a quick introduction to Assemblymember Garcia, and we'll get started. Okay, we got some great questions. Oh, and
Sounds
I like
good.
your background. It doesn't look like you're in your car or anything right now.
That's right. I'm in the state capitol now.
Yeah, you are. For everyone attending participants, Eduardo Assemblymember Garcia was elected to the Assembly in 2014. He represents California's 56th district, which encompasses Riverside County, Imperial County, including Blythe, Brawley, Bermuda Dunes, Calexico, Calabria, Cathedral City, Coachella, Desert. Hi, who's that in the back?
That's Ella from Coachella.
Right on, Ella. Hot Spring or Desert Hot Springs, El Centro, Holtville, Imperial, Indio, Mecca, Oasis, North Shore, Salton Sea, Thermal, Thousand Palms, and Westmoreland. Garcia is currently the chair of the Assembly Committee on Waters, Parks, and Wildlife. In this capacity, he oversees some of the state's most pressing issues, such as drought conditions and the implementation of the multi-billion-dollar Proposition 1 water bond, which was passed by California voters in 2014. Assemblymember Garcia has made a point to champion measures that would increase access to healthcare, bring environmental and economic relief to the areas of the Coachella and Imperial Valleys, such as the Salton Sea, New River, but also provides workforce training and financial assistance to small businesses in the district. He is a proud father, husband, and lifelong resident of Coachella Valley. Welcome, Assemblymember Garcia. It's so nice to have you. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. As always, it's great to be able to speak to issues that are important to us on a personal level, and I think more importantly today, issues that we need to continue to raise profile on, given the projections of the state of California's economy. And so for me, being able to speak on these specific issues, whether we're talking about investments in the outdoor recreational spaces, or for that matter, highlighting what happens to be important components to California's economy, like our outdoor economy, now more than ever, having these opportunities to speak on those issues, I think allow us to, begin strategizing on what it is we need to do to ensure that as decisions are being made in the next session and the years to come, that we're not considered kind of the items that get put on the chopping block for reductions and investments and things of that sort, given that we know that the outdoor economy is a robust, significant one to California as it relates to attracting tourism. And we know that it also consists of hundreds of thousands of jobs here in California. So when we talk about economic recovery, we have to make sure that we're talking about the outdoor economy. And look, I know that two separate sessions, we've made an attempt to establish an actual office that looks at the outdoor economy specifically here in California. And I think that we need to continue to push that agenda in parallel with the decisions that are going to be made moving forward as it relates to investments. The other, part to all this is the work that we've been doing and we will continue to, follow through with, and that's a climate resiliency bond that will allow us to make those significant investments in California, again, to raise profile on environmental conservation issues, but how they tie into this overall outdoor economy that is extremely important to us. So any chance that we get to talk about these issues, because personally they are very significant to me, we jump on that opportunity. So I want to thank Doug for the invitation, and happy just to share a few other thoughts and really hear from you all. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. But for us, moving into this next year, we're going to continue this conversation about the climate bond. I was very fortunate enough to work with Mr. Bloom from the Santa Monica area, Mr. Mullen from the Bay Area, and Laura Friedman from the Glendale, Pasadena area that, came together to be able to put a comprehensive package. And although a lot of things happened due to COVID-19, we still didn't let go of the issue. We actually put forward a number of the elements from the bond into some of the recovery conversations, and are hopeful that, we'll get some of those funded at some point by the administration. In terms of the outdoor office, I think that that's something that we got to continue to push. We got to continue to push and remind folks what the economy evolving around the outdoors recreational activities in California consist of, so that people begin to really value what that means from a jobs perspective, and what it will do to help us on track to recover economically. So, I know those are the things that you're all interested in. Of course, I'd like to just highlight there were some significant investments in this last budget to go towards parks, to go towards conservation. Of course, never enough, but certainly it was good to see some of the investments being made in the budget. And we got to make sure that that money gets to the places where the need is greatest. That's the same thing with the conversations that we will be having with the other components of Prop 68, making sure that we're pushing out that money sooner than what we anticipated. And we also know that in Prop 1, there's still some major infrastructure dollars there that are yet to be spent. And part of the recovery plans that have been discussed is taking a look at all of these funds that are available at the state level that have already been approved, whether it be by voters through bonds and or other types of funding sources like the greenhouse gas reduction funds, and be very strategic on those investments, So that's kind of part of our agenda moving into the next legislative session. And again, excited to be able to just share a few thoughts with you all from the California State Assembly floor.
Well, Assemblymember Garcia, you've been a huge partner of our community, and you kind of touched on the questions that we did get from folks. We want to know more about the bond and where that's going. You answered that, but I think more importantly, what can this community do
Sure.
for you and your colleagues right now? Because you do want to invest in the infrastructure regarding outdoor recreation. You want to have economic recovery when it comes around the outdoor recreation community within California. So what can we do to help support you and your colleagues at this time?
Well, look, I think that the first step is that we need to continue to raise profile, as I mentioned earlier, on what the outdoor economy consists of, right, in the state of California. And you probably have better, more relevant data than I do off the top of my head. But, you know, I remember several 100,000 jobs, right? And it's several $billion, you know, industry for California. And so we know that those two components need to continue to be at the forefront of our talking points. Between the two houses and the administration. They need to recognize, right, and I think a majority of people do, that we have to invest more in this particular area to gain more. It's not one of those where if we start reducing our investments in this area, that we can expect, you know, a multiple effect of net gain jobs and or revenues for the state. So we have to continuously kind of raise that issue, assuming that no one knows. I think we got to kind of start from a place of we're starting fresh and educating everybody on how significant the outdoor economy is to California. So that's the first thing. When we get to that place, I think we are able to then justify greater investments there. Right, $1 invested here will generate X amount of jobs and or X amount of revenues as a result of that. And you know, you all have a lot of smart people around you advising, as well as, you know, looking at the economics of it. And we have to make sure that we talk about those things from a economic perspective. For me, in terms of the bond, the legislative efforts for next year, I think we have a general consensus around the idea that a climate resiliency adaptation bond is something that California should be leading on. And these discussions actually began at the climate conference in Madrid, Spain, where we're working there, and got to spend some time with Secretary Crowfoot and Blumenfield, where a lot of the discussion was how do we utilize our natural resources, our natural lands, to help us reduce the carbon footprint in California, and how do they tie into economic development opportunities for the state. And so, you know, we came back fired up, knowing what we wanted to work on, and exactly what we ended up introducing with the other colleagues that I mentioned. You know, when we started off on this path, we actually were able to form a number of different work groups. We ended up with probably 15 or 16 principal and co-authors to the piece of legislation. So that tells me that there is an appetite. There definitely is an appetite to see these types of investments moving forward, you know, to address the issues. If you live by, you know, the coastal communities, if you're in the inland communities, a lot of interest on the issue of fire, preventative type of investments, hardening our infrastructure. And, you know, those issues haven't gone away, right? We're seeing that up and down the state of California. So therefore, these types of approaches and solutions are not going to be ones that we overlook. So I'm excited. You know, we'll have a little more time next year, hopefully, to work through the details of the policy, be more thorough, as one would say, to be able to put something that's comprehensive and that ultimately can get the 2/3 support in both houses and the support of the governor. What we do know is that as it relates to the governor and the administration, they too have an appetite to see these types of investments. We've seen that in their January budget proposal, right? They were already anticipating or asking us, putting out markers or signals that we want to make certain investments in specific areas, and they were very clear about it, right? There was nothing really unsaid. It was, we want to make investments in water infrastructure and several other areas related to climate resiliency and adaptation. And I thought that was a great signal for us, good marching orders for us to try to put together a package. And, you know, we'll be back with the same group working on this issue, and hoping that all of you will also participate with us along the way.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And that's fantastic. And I would say this community is excited to help partner with you and your colleagues in Sacramento, but also too, We just appreciate your leadership and just being a champion in California and in the 56th district and everything that you do. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, we're gonna wrap up here, but again, appreciate you calling in, and thanks Ella as well for joining us.
Thank you again for the invitation, and we look forward to staying in communication with you all.
Awesome. Thank you, Assemblymember Garcia.
Take care.
Thank you. All right, folks, we're going to switch to our next panel here. So just give us a couple minutes, and we'll start at the 1 o'clock hour.